So we want to move on and talk about another study we've done with Alexander Mann Solutions. Lewis Cohen is the head of their outsourcing performance and innovation group. He's going to talk about a quarterly report where we look at incremental changes in the technology sector and things that, this news that you can use actually about what companies are out, coming up, et cetera. So without further ado, Lewis.
Hello. Yes, so my name's Lewis Cohen. I think I was something like employee number 6 originally at Alexander Mann, so I've been in the business a little while. And certainly in that time, we've seen several rounds of technology that were going to do away with the human in the recruitment process. Email, I think, was the first one over that time. But the advent of the ATS, job boards, and actually what we're seeing as we research the market is an emerging strategy which I'd like to talk a bit about today, which is absolutely about technology enabling us to put people back into the process, put the human back into the recruitment process, and in doing so, leverage an array of technology that best suits what that organization needs to achieve. So I don't think it's a new concept for any of us to think that technology is what's going to give us competitive advantage today and keep us in the game, just keep us competitive tomorrow. I think the operative word here, though, is around leveraging an ecosystem of technology. So not just one big piece of tech that's going to fix everything, but selecting from this dazzling array of emerging technologies the right blend for the organization to meet the organization's individual needs. And this is such a small sampling of the tech. I could literally spend all of my time here today refreshing this slide just with new startups from the last 12 months operating in this space. And as we try and look to see what the right array of technology for us is, it can be quite an overwhelming task. This isn't a particularly old slide, but I think some of these players actually wouldn't make it onto the next iteration of this, and there'd be a whole raft of new ones to go on there. And you find yourself thinking, where do I start? When really all I want to do is make good hires. But of course, organizations can be, they can have multiple personalities. The same organization could need a very high volume, high turnaround, low touch recruitment machine, and at the same time, need a very high-touch concierge service to make hires within the same organization. And so the blends are all going to be very different. And this is where the idea of the ecosystem evolves, selecting exactly the right bits of tech against these kind of broad vertical bits of the process to suit the need. This might be an example of an ecosystem. What we have here are assessment and selection, the ATS obviously remaining the system of record, being that backbone of the process, but then other more targeted bits of tech around the process which can play to individual priorities for an organization. So when you think about making good hires, what does that mean? Is it actually my challenge as an organization is that I get 250,000 applications for 50 internship spots? Or is it, and in that situation, what you might need is more sophisticated assessment and selection technology, and to create an experience there that says enables you to say no to the best part of 250,000 people without that causing any kind of resentment towards your brand. Or at the other end of it, you might be looking for forensic data scientists and know that you are going to face-to-face interview absolutely everybody that you find in that space. And so you would perhaps, your ecosystem would have more of an emphasis on candidate identification and market data mining. But the themes that you see over on the right there are all universal in terms of what we see people trying to build into their ecosystems. Mass personalization, obviously mobile first as the core thing, but personalization. And one of the analogies that I like to draw is the simple ATM. Nowadays, everybody uses an ATM without thinking about it, and nobody feels they're getting a more premium experience if they have to go into a branch and queue up and have a human interaction in order to get their cash. Naturally, the path of least resistance is to go to the automated process that doesn't have a human in it interacting with them. But in order to get to that point, there's an element of trust, and they know that they're going to get exactly what they want out of that interaction when they want it at their convenience. And so technology actually is used to treat them more as a human and less like a piece of livestock than it would be if everybody had to go into the bank to get their cash. And that's a similar sort of thing to what we see organizations trying to put together with these ecosystems. I will offer up us now as a piece of living research, if you like, about how we have gone about this journey, recognizing about 2 years ago that we needed to get in at the bottom floor of this process automation. And we looked to our network of global client service centers, looking for processes which would lend themselves to automation. And we found lots, as you would imagine. We also found a population of people doing those manual processes today who were so keen to start talking about automation, so keen to see what opportunities automation could create for them, as opposed to perhaps what you might think as an organization and be nervous about is people worrying that their bots were going to be replacing their jobs. And we now have people who were administrators now being robot managers and product managers for automation platforms. And it's been amazing to see that transformation take place. And so a piece of insight from that experience is not to be fearful about that, and that people are ready to embrace automation. A typical scenario would be, was this one. This is a real scenario where a VMS was being decommissioned. So moving from one vendor management system to another, 70,000 files all needed to be carefully downloaded, libraried, and made auditable in the future. Plan A to do that sort of activity would be to use people to do it. We've got people who can do that sort of activity. But obviously it would take time. There's always the potential for error. And it's not really fulfilling activity to do. Plan B is to build a robot to do it. And this is where we really entered our journey into building RPA into the process, and to build a bot to do all of the file downloading and management and librarying for that activity. And obviously error-free, much quicker because it operates at a higher rate and 24/7. I don't know why it says no tantrums. Nobody has tantrums at AMS. And from there, it was kind of a rapid acceleration because, as Jerry pointed out, starting small and proving the concept, it really built up some momentum. So within the course of 6 months, we had a robot to do electronic signatures, contractor referencing processes, and to pull together reports from multiple sources. It is not compulsory to anthropomorphize your automation in this way, I should point out. And there's two schools of thought about whether it's advantageous. Now, it's no coincidence that all 4 of these bots started in the contingent worker side of our business, because much more of the contingent process sits on our side of the fence. We own the systems, we own the data, we own the candidate relationship. So much more of this was within our gift to automate. As we look to how to expand automation into other parts of our business, then that starts getting us into having to talk to clients and get them comfortable with what we need to automate. And there, you need more than just our own efficiency benefits to get people engaged and get people interested. Perhaps in the same way that an HR organization needs to get to build that kind of interest and consensus around the advantage of automating that goes beyond just making things easier within HR and carries through into having real impact for the business itself. And so that led to the next generation of automation platforms that we've been building. And again, this is where we start getting into our ecosystem type products. And two examples of that are Hannah and Isaac. Hannah is automated candidate help desk, and Isaac is interview scheduling. So, give you the example here around Hannah. We operate a candidate help desk of some sort or another across most of our accounts. Either formalized, we have a help desk, and that's who you call if you need help, or it's interwoven. That activity is interwoven into other people's roles, be it a recruiter's role or a sourcer's role or a manager's role. And for years, we've struggled with the challenge, which is how do you give a really high quality and high touch interaction there, but make that something which is available broadly, often outside of working hours, and something that doesn't take a load of menus and waiting to get through to. And so the approach here was to say, well, we need the workflow management part of that. So there's a piece of technology, we use a workflow management tool. And then, why don't we create an array of front ends for that workflow management tool that says some people might want to just go and look at an FAQ online. Some people might want to interact with a chatbot. Some people might want a live chat. Some people might want to speak to an operator. And in fact, in addition to what people's preferences are, it may be that any of those channels could be the most effective and the quickest way of getting that candidate the information that they need. And so the ecosystem for Hannah is using non-robotic workflow management, but then also chatbot-based technology so that they can interact with a chatbot, and then additional robotics to tie all of the different bits of technology together. That's where robotics gets really interesting from our point of view, especially as we deal with different client systems where there historically hasn't been the appetite to build integrations. Being able to use RPA to just log in as a human would to do those tasks sometimes removes the need for those sorts of automations. But anyway, so that's one example of using the technology so that when someone does speak to a human, it's a human who has the capacity to really take time and coach and understand what the candidate is looking for beyond the material that's already been presented to them on their journey through to speaking to that person. Interview scheduling, a completely different scenario. What we're talking about here is the backwards and forwards. Can you do Wednesday? No, you can't do Wednesday. Can you do Thursday? No, they can't do Thursday. No benefit to humans doing that process. No benefit to that process being done by humans who have to operate within working hours, because people often don't want to talk about interviews during working hours. And so what Isaac does is use robotics. There's a fantastic mobile-first portal where people can offer up their availability, and then robotics does the matching. These are just segments of the process, and that's really where it plays to the whole pilot, start small, build some momentum and build some consensus so that this will roll out into other aspects of the process, offer management and onboarding being another example. And this is the sort of feedback that's gathered when people are where automation has lifted the burdensome, low-value activity of people and freed them up to be able to have higher value conversations with candidates and hiring managers. So how do we start? How do you get started in this process? Well, these are kind of 5 steps which we would identify as being critical. The first one is invest in some technical capability or access whatever technical capability exists within your organization. This isn't stuff that can be done off the side of people's desks. Learn how to spot a process which is ripe for automation. We talk a lot internally about the swivel chair task, a task where somebody has to interact with multiple platforms or go to multiple places to get one thing done. Maybe they have to look at an email, then they have to go to a SharePoint, and then they maybe have to go to the ATS to get one single task done. That's a swivel chair task which could be automated, assuming the rules stay the same. And processes, you can automate a process that is suboptimal as long as it's always suboptimal in the same way. get people excited and build some pull. I guarantee that in the time that we've all been here together, someone in probably all of our organizations has put together a spreadsheet that never needed to be created. It didn't need to be a spreadsheet. Could have been something as simple as a web form, or maybe it didn't need a human pulling that together. Right? I can picture the people in AMS who've done it already. But offering people the alternative, showing them how effective different applications of technology can be, you will build an organizational pull that will get people knocking down your door and going, can we use a bot for this? Can we use a bot for that? And that's the kind of conversation that I have on a daily basis now is, well, yeah, people are knocking down my door saying, can we use bots for all of this stuff? And the answer then gets down to be, well, yes, but you need to look at the business case and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't take long once you build up one or two success stories to have everybody knocking down your door. So having demonstrable value and getting the news out there is important. And then recognizing that a more automated operation is going to lead to some different roles within your organization, different types of people. As I say, we have people whose job is to educate bots and manage bots now, which didn't exist before. And so understanding the governance and the standardization there is critical as well. And again, it's not just us, but the people who are pioneering this are all serving this strategy, putting people back into the process and elevating the experience for all the stakeholders. Horizon 1, for many of us, has been, and for some of us will still be, create some efficiencies. But Horizon 2 is how do we reinvest those efficiencies in the quality of the service, the quality of the experience that we're delivering. So I hope that has been helpful.